It's the 13th of November 2022. Hope everybody's doing good on this Sunday. I'm your host, Dana Durnford. Yippee-ki-yay. I'm also known as the Nuclear Proctologist, where we delve into the nuclear industry where people fear to go. We are the first ones there many times. You can call in on the hotline 709-589-4406. How do you save a nuclear scientist from drowning? You throw him an anchor, Dana. I was always wondering how to do it. That makes sense. Usually we keep our foot under our heads to make sure they don't drown, because that works. They don't need air. They breathe water, right? Hard water or fuel pool water, Dana? Oh, yeah, fuel pool water. We got a poll tonight. Got a poll, one poll, two polls, three polls, right here, four polls. Joe Millo asked, does anybody have trouble voting? He was talking about the poll tonight. Has anybody got problems voting? We got 21 votes. And 14% thinks that it's okay to have farms around nuclear power plants. That's just crazy talk. Japan harvests food, grows food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. Do you think that's normal? Is that acceptable? Maybe that's a new trend. I don't know. You tell me. Canada blocked the food. I'm sorry. That's a lie. Canada removed all restrictions after 93 days. In 2011, from the entire country, 55 countries banned the food in 14 prefectures. I marked them for you. And they were pretty smart, obviously, to do it, because look at these upstanding citizens growing food in a nuclear wasteland. Why would you grow food in a nuclear wasteland? We got a poll tonight. Oh, that's not the poll, Dana. Try that again. Is there something strange about that picture? Am I just being a sookie baby? I wonder. Accumulation of nuclides, radionuclides by plants is a monitoring system. They got all kinds of studies that say the food sucks up the radiation. Guess what they do with the food? Do they dig a hole and dump it, Dana? No, apparently not. Did he sneak it into the supermarkets, Dana? Yeah. They doing it on purpose? Apparently, because out of all the nuclear power plants worldwide, 1% of them are not surrounded by farms. They're usually in big cities, is why. As far as you can see farms, whenever you back away from a nuclear power plant, all nuclear power plants are hemorrhaging radiation all the time from the fuel pools. It's just a coincidence, Dana. Probably. I don't know. I'm just asking a question. We got a little poll there to try to help you wrap your mind around it. Should all nuclear power plants, also known as disease factories, because there's 1,800 illnesses, really be surrounded by farms? My guess is no. That's just a shot in the dark. Experimentally determined translocation of cesium in potatoes. I hate the word cesium with a passion. It's because it's meant to hide all the brutal isotopes that they're murdering the insects and birds and animals and mammals and people that go to supermarkets. You go to the supermarket. If you don't go to the supermarket, then it's not a big deal, right? But if you go to a supermarket, it's a little bit concerning, kind of. 134 cesium, then you're going to have uranium and plutonium and americium and neptunium and strontium and 1,000 other fission products. It just gives me the shivers every time. Every time I see a picture of a nuclear power plant surrounded by farms. I got to dig out the 1,000 studies I got of how plants and the ecosystem sucks up radiation. Maybe that'll help people understand. Scary is a playground where you can see a nuclear plant in the background. Talk about twisted, man, oh man, oh man. They don't make good neighbors, in case you didn't know. But it turns out it's not a coincidence. Almost every single one of these disease factories is surrounded by farms. The fuel pools is where they take the reactor cores every 18 months or so, half of it, and puts it in a pool of water for a few decades. It's still splitting the atoms. And they're soaked up by the liter. You got billions and billions or trillions of atoms per liter. And then that's evaporated 120 tons, 120,000 liters a day into the farms. And then as it's evaporated, all the isotopes are liberated. All the stuff that lands within 50 or 100 miles is getting soaked up by the farms. Then you ship it to the supermarket to make you into Superman and the Hulk, Dana. They're trying to create more Hulks than Superman, Dana. Wow, I never thought about that. That's amazing. 134 cesium, 85 strontium in fruit plants. Do you eat fruit? Or asparagus, or potatoes, or apples, or anything from a supermarket? You're probably going to get sick and die before your children, or your children are going to get sick and die before you do, because they're more vulnerable, I should say. What's the odds of all the nuclear power plants being surrounded accidentally by farms? Try getting somebody in Las Vegas to take the bets on that one. Do you eat wheat? Do you eat bread or buns or all kinds of cakes or cookies or anything like that? They're trying to turn you into the Hulk and Spider-Man. I swear. But what's the odds that they don't know the difference? Because I got all kinds of studies showing they know the difference. Do they just... Is that their way of saying they like us? Maybe that's it. I don't know. We got a big crew here tonight. 17 people. Wow. After a whole decade of brutal 5 days a week, month after month, year after year, hard work, I finally have become a celebrity. I got 17 people. I bet you there's probably nobody else on the planet working that long and can get 17. 16 maybe, but not 17. You got to be a pretty hard worker to scoop that up. I appreciate all you awesome 17 people. Warms my little heart. My swelled up little... Because radiation likes to attack your heart. Lots and lots of radiation will make you sick. And won't kill you. It'll turn you into Spider-Man or the Hulk or one of the many other superheroes they created. Why is there so many farms around this nuclear power plant, Mommy? Imagine a nuclear scientist's kid asking their parents, Daddy, you're a nuclear scientist. Mommy, you're a nuclear physicist. How come the farms are surrounding all the nuclear power plants? And they say, weren't you supposed to be off to military school for the summer? Anyway, if you ask the IAEA why the nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms, You might have a car accident on the way home and not survive to ask again. Holy shit! I got 18 people on my show. Oh, made a lawyer out of me. I actually seen 18 that time. Google. Nuclear lobbyists messing with me. There it is again. 18. Wow. I might as well retire now. 18 people on my show. Nuclear companies have infiltrated universities. They didn't infiltrate them, they captured them. All the regulatory agencies on top of that. And of course, all your media worldwide has been captured. Did you know they had 1,000 tanks at Fukushima? I counted them. There's only 750, and most of them are small ones. There's a conspiracy going on that the fuel pools at the top of the buildings are still intact. I was shocked. I was like, really? Looks like they're gone to me. How about you? Does that look like a 190-foot building to anybody, or is that just me being weirdo? So just again, the fuel pools, there's 2 of them at the top of the building. They have no repository, so everything is stored there, see? And so when I was looking at the building, they had this wreckage. They stripped it down till there was nothing left. It's completely destroyed. That's the remains of reactor 3. They built this off-site, brought it in, and put it there with cranes. And lo and behold, claimed they're above the fuel pool that actually doesn't even exist. But there's people out there saying I'm wrong. Dana's wrong. Media's walking on top of a nuclear meltdown. Maybe that's the quickest way to be Spider-Man or the Hulk, Dana. It's hard to say. That definitely looks like a 190-foot tall building to me. If you were supposed to go look at an apartment, it was in a 19-story building. And you seen that, would you say that's a 19-story? I think that's the 19-story building they're talking about to your partner or to your puppy or whatever. Would you? Would you say that's a 90-foot building? Look at them. They're on top of a building that don't exist. It's a friggin' miracle. The sad part about this is they're claiming that's a 190-foot building over there. Does this up here look like a 190-foot building to anybody? Anybody? Is there somebody? They're claiming the fuel pool, which should be up right here and right there, is still intact. That was the elevator shaft right there. But I mean, there's nothing left to the building. Look at the guts of the building. They're claiming the crane is above the fuel pool when the fuel pool should be way up here. It's pretty bizarre. They're claiming that Anna from CNN is in the fuel pool 100 feet above the wreckage to your left.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011, leading to the country's worst nuclear disaster.
Does anybody actually believe she's in the fuel pool at the top of that building? Is there actually, besides the nuclear industry, is there anybody believes that she's in the fuel pool? Anybody? Nobody? Fukushima plume model showed 1 million becquerels over the west coast. A study showing 20,000 particles of radioactive iodine-131, actual particles, folks, per liter fell on the U.S. 20,000. There should be around 31 times more iodine-129 for every 131, Dana. Really? Because I got a study saying there's 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129 in the rain after Fukushima in Canada, United States. This was a Ottawa study. Let's forget all the evidence and just pretend that they're in the fuel pool like all of these upstanding journalists are doing. Is that a better solution? Forget the truth. Let's just pretend everything's normal. Could less radiation in food make the public feel unsafe? That's a brain freeze, right? Could less radiation in food make the public feel in harm's way? That's called maniacs. It's hard to imagine that somebody actually said that, right? Canada lifted all restrictions June the 14th, 93 days after the nuclear meltdown started. It was still just hemorrhaging, roaring emissions on that day. Canada lifted all restrictions. 55 countries had restrictions for over a decade. Not Canada, of course, but everybody else did. Which meant Japan couldn't ship it anywhere, only Canada. And this is why everybody in Canada is sick and dying. Heart attacks are one of the most common things from radiation consumption, by the way. Can you tell the difference? Which building is real, do you think? The one to your left? Oops, I gave it away. The one to your left or the one to the right? Why do you think all these CBS, BBC, CNN, ABC is pretending they're in a building that don't exist? Doesn't that shock you? Doesn't that worry you? Doesn't that confuse you? I'd say 60 foot at max. 60 feet of what, though? 60 feet of wreckage? 60 feet of carnage? There's nothing functional left in the buildings, right? So what they done was pretend they're coming from a nuclear meltdown. So the wreckage to your left, they're pretending they went in and cleaned it up. You can't physically get that close to it without dying within a few minutes. They put panels, a structure they built off site. They put panels on it and pretended it looked like that on the inside. And they done that to 2 buildings, Reactor 3, Reactor 4. Because they love us so much, obviously, Dana. Oh, why didn't I think of that? Over 11 years, close to 9 million people signed a petition against the N-word, folks. I can't say it, it's the N-word, power. Why don't they put the word nuclear there? They'll always do that. That's one of most Japanese media will not put the word nuclear in their headline. They'll put the N letter there and then power. It's bizarre, right? That's pretty amazing. 9 million people signed the petition. So imagine if everybody had access to the petition. And then they hand-delivered those petitions with signatures, actual signatures. Anti-nuclear petition, anti-nuclear. Doesn't take long to label you, though. They didn't put a nuclear petition. They put anti-nuclear petition. Didn't mind using the nuclear word there. They wouldn't use it here. Just a coincidence, Dana. Like everything with nuclear is just a coincidence. Due to the duration, a number of initial champions of the movement have since died. You know, from heart attacks and diseases caused by radiation. Should government reinvest in nuclear power to fight climate change? Every time I see a headline like that, you're like, can these people actually tie their own shoes? Can they? That's a question I can't seem to wrap my mind around. My scenario is no. Somebody died at Sizewell today. And the machine just keeps marching on. Sizewell sees the answer to the UK's economy, climate and energy woes. Jessica Lovering, who we've covered a number of times on that story, is a female. And another female on this story, because these are terrible lies. And they didn't write the story, they just signed their name to it, and that's how they get paid. The nuclear industry actually write the story. You're not allowed to write stories about nuclear. You got to get it okayed by the nuclear industry. Sizewell sees the answer to the UK's economic, climate, and energy woes. Woe is me. Really? Well, they're gonna be froze to death this winter. If they had started in a big spring building renewables and storage, and not the idiotic batteries, then they would have lots of power this winter. But the nuclear industry won't let them build anything on any nuclear. The only winner from cancelling Sizewell C would be Vladimir Putin. He's the president of Russia. He's the friend of the New World Order, that's for sure. So they show you this picture, but if you actually look it up, it's surrounded by farms. Which coincidentally, I got a poll tonight. Should all nuclear power plants surrounded by, or aka disease factors, because there's 1,800 diseases, really be surrounded by farms? I got 31 votes, a resounding yes. So why did they show you that picture rather than that picture? Why are you building a brand new nuclear power plant surrounded by estuaries and important estuaries and farms? Because they love you so much? That could be. You never know. UN, again, my suspicions, they're trying to create more Hulks and Spider-Man. And Wolverines and Superman. They want more people out there allergic to krypton. Turns out everybody's allergic to krypton. It's a nasty isotope. So are all the whales and birds and animals and mammals. But who cares about them? Let's care about nuclear only. UN nuclear chief says radioactive waste recycling, and chief being demonic sadistic demon, is difficult technology. Well, apparently Moltex in Canada is going to convert all the nuclear, well, they're not even from Canada, from Britain. Ew! Nuclear industry, of course. The rest of Britain is really cool. Nuclear industry in Britain is just, wow, man. How can you walk around without a brain? How does that actually work? Back on the juice, Buckley's. Man. Dude. If you got kids, you want to screw them over, you make them take some of that shit. They won't be bad for a month. I'll get the Buckleys out. In the old days, you get the belt out, and that worked. Now you can get the Buckley out and just show them to them. Come here, why don't you? Oh, I'll do the dishes, the floor, and paint the house. UN nuclear chief says radioactive waste recycling is difficult. It's disgusting. Between La Hague in France and Windscale and Donneray in the United Kingdom, they've contaminated the entire Arctic. These are reprocessing fuel disease factories. The interesting thing about it was that, I thought, this is just me personally, was La Hague in France, which is surrounded by farms, of course, has over 500 security guards. 500 security guards. SNP accused of abandoning nuclear power. Scottish National Party accused of abandoning nuclear power. I'm assuming that's what it means. Scottish Nuclear Party, or Scottish Nuclear Party. Scotland's National Party. It's illegal in Ireland to have nuclear. Scotland is vehemently against nuclear. But apparently the ministers never visited the disease factory a single time. I wouldn't either. These are disease factories. The older they are, the more everything is bombarded with neutrons and all kinds of radiations. There's a little disease factory. What was really interesting about it, I never expected to see, was it was surrounded by farms. I'm totally surprised, I tell you what. Huntington B. Man, that place is a disease factory in overdrive. They're accused of abandoning nuclear power industry after it was revealed the energy ministers never once. So if a single person doesn't visit the disease factory that's closed down, I might add, they're abandoning nuclear. Grow up. Literally, just like grow up, you whining, sniveling little twerp. Huntington B was decommissioned earlier this year. First off, it takes about 60 to 100 years to decommission these disease factories. 45, and the fuel pools are still full of fuel rods hemorrhaging radiation into the farms all day, every day, and the environment and the ocean. Well, imagine, because they boil water by splitting atoms. When you take it out, it's still splitting atoms. It's still boiling 120 tons of water a day out of the pool. 121-ton pickup trucks with 1,000 liters in the back of each of them, each day. 365 days a year, and each liter is billions and even trillions of atoms. I got a theory, though. They're trying to turn everybody into the Hulk and Spider-Man because there's going to be an alien invasion in the future. We're going to need a lot of Hulks and Spider-Man to beat them, see? Can't fool me, man. I'm on it. I'm all over it. From the plant, employees will remain on site for 3 years to suck up the radiation so they don't have to pay out pensions in the future. He said it's appalling that the cabinet secretary in charge of Scotland's energy mix hasn't bothered once to visit a disease factory disguised as a nuclear power plant. Try not to hack and cough and spit and sneeze and clean my sinuses this time. Oh, that's water good. Water good. Water good. Smash. Water good. My God, I could be turning into the Hulk. I ate food from the supermarket the other day. I don't know what to do. Opposition to nuclear power ahead of supporting and engaging with the workforce. We'll give you free berries and carrots and potatoes if you join our nuclear team. Dead man tells no tale, I think, is the right appropriate. The Scottish government complete abandonment of their disease factories is intolerable and unforgivable. Wah! Wah! Nuclear industry kicks somebody's ass in the gear. Nuclear energy plays a key role in meeting Canada's net zero goal. Yeah, it only provides power for a single province in Ontario. A little bit in New Brunswick, but 95% is Ontario. Net Zero, which was a paper written by Miles Allen and was scooped up by United Nations and weaponized against the population. Disgusting, isn't it, boy? There is an undeniable truth that Canada will need to accept and embrace dirty nuclear power. Is a key to element of reaching net zero. Like I said, a journalist couldn't write that. Only the nuclear industry could write something so twisted and sadistic. Canada is the only country in the Western Hemisphere with an abundance of critical minerals necessary for batteries. So that renewables can have batteries, and then they're not. That's the fable, right? It's not hard to hate these people, is it? Why would you want batteries for storage when you got geothermal tidal energy for starters, which is 24 hours a day? This is desperation. We're seeing this a lot. So people come and read the article and they say, well, we can't have renewables. We don't got batteries. That's what they're hoping is going to happen. But everybody reads it is going, whoever wrote this is an idiot. No one actually believes their propaganda, not even them, obviously. Nearly 90% of Canada reported they are negatively affected by climate change caused by radiation fallout for 80 years, by the way. I can guarantee you 90% of Canada didn't participate in that conversation that they're claiming. At all. I'll show you what 16 days of radiation fallout looks like from Japan. This is France's model. She's pretty. I like the yellow and the blue. That works for me really good. I already done a show on cell phones yet. I can do another one. I'm not racist against cell phones. Mom, Dana's racist against the cell phone industry. I can hear nuclear academics' children now. Nuclear scientists in basements all over the world were, Mom, come down into the basement. Dana's making fun of nuclear scientists again. Germany pulls screeching U-turn. British newspaper, of course, right? To keep the nuclear plants open. A screeching U-turn. Well, they had 36. They only got 3 left. They got rid of all of them except for 3. Those 3 were supposed to be turned off in January. So they're going to wait till April. Does that really sound like a screeching U-turn to anybody? That's what I mean. Media's not your friend, that's for sure. German parliament approved to keep nuclear plants running for an extra 4 months until April the 15th next year. So 4 months, and they turned it into as if Germany's going to build 1,000 nuclear plants and shove one up everybody's, What a strange... I like to have a conversation, whoever wrote that story, and ask them on video to count to 10 with their eyes closed. No cheating, right? I bet you they can't do it. That's just me, but... 375 MPs voted in favor of amending the Atomic Energy Act in Germany. 216 voted against it. 70 abstained. Abstained. Did you elect them to abstain from these votes? I can't vote. Nuclear industry will get mad at me if I vote. Yeah, that's the world we live in. Only stupid is allowed to exist. I put that headline back there again. Should the government reinvest in nuclear power to fight climate change? Literally, the Now, we're seeing this all day, every day, this particular framing of a narrative. And Jessica Lovering is just bizarre. We've covered her propaganda. She never wrote it, obviously. She put her name on the story. That's how a journalist makes money, eh? Lobbyists will send them, they'll build up an audience of cat videos and stuff like that, and then they'll publish studies or stories like this and claim it's theirs. There's zero possibility Jessica wrote that. There's just too many details. You got to be a pro-nuclear creepo in order to come up with something like that. The climate crisis was still accelerating. Now with Europe, of course it is because of Fukushima. Now with Europe trying to wean itself off Russia, no, it's not trying to wean it. It put an embargo immediately, and it drove inflation in Europe, across Europe, and destroyed everybody's lives. Given the urgent need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Well, the so-called greenhouse gas emissions is carbon. And you can't have plants or trees or animals or insects without carbon. This is a plutonium-239 radioactive fallout map covering the planet from TEPCO's numbers. It's infinitely worse than that, by the way. And 239 is the worst of the worst of plutonium isotopes. Yay. There's an even stronger case to be made for nuclear energy. Something that's going to come in 3 times over budget, which is always multiple billions of dollars, is going to come in 2 to 3 times over the allotted time frame. So if they say they can do it in 7 years, it's going to be 14, or like Wattspar, 43 years. There's a lot of money to be made if you just want to regurgitate lies from lobbyists, particularly the nuclear industry. They're very prolific, eh? This is an interesting story. France, too little, too late. Parking lots in France must set up solar panels. They're hoping by doing this that they can have the same energy as 10 large nuclear power plants. France got over half their fleet shut down because of the Wigner effect from neutron bombardment has caused irreparable corrosion throughout the infrastructure. So if one of the things they're hoping is the parking lots will be able to charge cars, electric cars in the future. They want this implemented within 5 years. And if these are big lots, they want it in less than 3 years. But France is going to freeze this year, so is Britain, because they're dependent upon dirty nuclear from France, right? It's all connected. Looks like we got a few trolls tonight, do we? Spamming us. Should all nuclear power plants, also known as disease factories, really be surrounded by farms? We covered that at the beginning extensively. 84% is still a major win, even though the trolls came in and spammed us. And every time we talk about farms and nuclear, that happens. Under a new law, car parks in France with 80 or more parking spots will need to be equipped with overhead solar panels. They got rid of all of their renewable energy over the last couple of years and claim they're going to build more nuclear when they can't even maintain or finish the nuclear plants they're building worldwide. The government is counting on electricity capacity equivalent to 10 nuclear reactors. Yep, that's the new France. France is some stupid. They got no water to run their reactors. They're going to build more. They're stupid. Then there's France, man. The French nuclear industry is the epitome of, whoa. Utility pitches $216 million solar farm for Kappadokya coal ash pit. It's an unlined ash pit, of course. They're the biggest. The Tennessee Valley Authority is the biggest producer of energy in the United States. Look at it. They want to put a solar panels over their capped cold ash pit. You know what you got for a capped ash pit? Is sod. Is turf. It's just bizarre. because they were allotted the money to clean it up, so they just stole it for the crazy shareholders. They'll do whatever they want. There's no one to hold them accountable on top of that. 1,000 megawatts is a gigawatt. You're talking about a nuclear power plant, a large one. They'll do whatever they want, and they won't even do a good job. The idea is to leave it there. So let's put a solar plant over it. It's no good for nothing. Let's make the people that go in there sick to keep it maintenance, to build it. They have over 300,000 acres of land that is contaminated in an unlined pit, contaminating the groundwater. That's not the only thing that's contaminating. The rivers and the streams, the farms. It is developing small modular reactors. This has been going on for 50 years, and so everybody now is signing memorandums of understandings. They're going to get small modular reactors, not solar, not renewables, not wind, not geothermal. You can replace all coal plants, oil, gas, nuclear plants with geothermal. Just take out the coal, oil, and gas and stick in the geothermal. Leave the whole infrastructure there. Now they're saying they're going to do that with small modular reactors that don't exist. The industry is desperate, and it'll kill everything on the planet rather than have something else show up. How drones are helping monitor Kazakhstan's radioactive legacy from the Soviet Union, which was an amazing country, right? They actually sent satellites to Venus. Nobody in North America has ever done that. That's, 60, 70 years ago, rather. Airborne monitoring is helping. First off, if you got to use drones, you're not supposed to be there. If it's airborne monitoring, these communities should be abandoned immediately. Every time I hear the word drones and nuclear, I almost want to, it's upsetting, to say the least. The industry just doesn't care about themselves or anybody else. They're the end of humanity and all the species is what nuclear actually is. Just from radioactive fallout from all the fuel pools worldwide. Decades later, waste still remains. Of course it does. There's no repository anywhere on the planet. They're not trying to clean up anywhere on the planet. If you look at Hanford, nuclear, what they call reservation, 585 square mile nuclear wasteland, which is all pours downhill into the Columbia River. Columbia River goes down through millions of people's communities. Millions of people in communities and massive farmlands all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Where it comes out is where all the killer whales are emaciated, by the way. Law limiting Pilgrim Water Release, he said no, awaits Baker's signature. He wouldn't sign off on it. So the fine community at Cape Cod has protested Pilgrim Nuclear Plant releasing 1 million gallons of treated, every time you hear that word, that's an absurd lie, radioactive water from Pilgrim's Nuclear Power Station, spent fuel pools. The fuel pools are full of the entire ranges of deadly isotopes. If you try to filter it, you can no longer, after 10 minutes, you can't get near the filter again. You can't filter all of it. You can filter a percentage of it, but now you can't get near the filter. Unless you change the filter every 3 or 4 minutes. And even then, what are you going to... It's talking about lethal doses in just a short while. Holtec officials said in July public hearing that if the state prohibited, which is Chris Singh, and we've covered him probably 500 times, there's zero possibility. He's the cook, he's the president, he's the janitor, he's a little bit of everybody. Well, we don't talk about ultraviolet radiation here. We're talking about man-made anthropogenic nuclear. Bernard, so stick to the subject. Don't be doing that to the audience that has been here a lot longer than you are and knows the difference, okay? The people in the comment section are not naive or gullible, not yelling at you, don't have a hissy fit. I'm saying stick to the subject because I don't tolerate people that don't stick to the subject. He must act by this Sunday. Liquids for the spent nuclear fuel pools and other reactor systems contain elevated levels of radioactive contaminants, including tritium. Imagine talking about tritium when the fuel pool is full of uranium and plutonium and americium and neptunium and strontium and all the other deadly radioactivity. Well, if you're not anti-nuclear, you shouldn't be here. If you try to grow plants alongside of Wi-Fi, they won't sprout. So they're harmful. But we're not talking about that tonight. We're talking about the Hulk and Spider-Man. We're talking about man-made radiation. We're talking about splitting the atoms. That's to stay on that subject, folks, please. That's everybody. Holtec announced last year that it planned to release more than 1 million gallons of treated effluents from the plant system. Again, refusing to acknowledge man-made anthropogenic radiation. France, only 6 reactors were shut down due to the heat wave. The rest were shut down due to corrosion from the Wigner effect. Strike 2. La 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 la. Not liking what I'm seeing. Holtec announced last year that it planned to release more than 1 million gallons. Now, they do it all the time. It's evaporated. Every day, they're boiling off 120,000 liters into the environment, into the area. Right? And so they got people disconnected from what's really going on and thinking that there's 1 million gallons and that it's just neutral. It's not. They have to add 120,000 liters every day. Each liter that boils off is billions or trillions of atoms. Very deceitful. It's very dishonest. And the people that are in the industry over the years, is shocking how subhuman they actually are. I've seen pro-nuclear hang out in my comments section for years at a time before they finally got uncovered. Trying to win over everybody in my comments section, right? And I refuse to get rid of the comment section because I believe people should be able to come somewhere and have a conversation because there's nowhere else to have the conversation. And then people will show up every once in a while and they're very opinionated about nuclear. They don't like this. They don't like people saying that about nuclear, saying that. That's red flags as it gets. O'Brien says it may use a combination of all four. I usually block them as soon as I see them. Sometimes I'll let them play around for a while, but I don't have any tolerance. I've been at this for so long. I have zero tolerance for the games that I've seen at least several thousand times over the year. Holtec plans to present a list of non-radioactive contaminants in the fuel pool. Think about that statement. Holtec plans to present a list of non-radiation that's in the fuel pool. You can't have anything in the fuel pool that's not irradiated. It's full of fuel rods, stupid. So Holtec should be barred from doing business at any nuclear power plants. And no, Bernard, you came in and you conflated different types of radiation yourself. You caused that argument, that divide yourself, right? And so I can't keep having you disrupting everybody by staying off subject. And you take care, man. Or whatever the frig you actually are. Arafat's death had no real investigation. Now, I covered this when that actually happened years ago. Or did I? That was, what year was that? 2004, I would have covered it, yeah. The late Palestinian president Yasser Arafat, he was poisoned with polonium. There's been a number of high-profile cases where people have been poisoned by this that were in key positions of government. You know, the Arafat was poisoned, we're told, by the French. And the French are a bunch of assassins, right? An investigation of Arafat's death commissioned by Al Jazeera found he was killed by poison identified as polonium, which is left over from nuclear waste. And when we finished our last show last Thursday, my Geiger counter was hitting 325, 350. That's crazy numbers. An investigation commissioned by Al Jazeera showed he was murdered, but they claimed he died of natural causes. He was murdered. Israel, of course, is the most likely suspect in that one. The fourth biggest weapons producer on the planet, the fourth biggest producer of misery on the entire planet. A mountain, a tower, a thermos of molten molten salt. These are the batteries that could power our renewable future. Actually, that story, it touches on a whole bunch of different storage techniques. And we have a whole bunch, right? Like pumped compressed air storage, where you dig mine shafts and compress air down to it. Or the water batteries, where you have two reservoirs that keep filling up each other, right? For storage, very simple technologies on top of that, very efficient, very long lasting. In the past, there was an easy fix. If grid operators needed more power, they just burn more fuel in real time to meet the demand, but that makes climate change worse. It doesn't. It's radioactivity that makes climate change. It's pulsing energy every second. So gas, oil, and coal emissions don't have those attributes. But man-made anthropogenic radiation, clouds covering the entire planet, this one was just 20 days. It never stopped. It doesn't stop at 20 days. The cloud doesn't disappear for millions of years. Pulsing energy every second. Pulsing energy every second, almost at the speed of light, almost at 186,000 miles per second, almost at 300,000 kilometers a second. 300,000 kilometers a second. Pulsing energy long past the human experience. Gas, oil, and coal emissions doesn't do that. And gas, oil, and coal emissions are big emissions. It's carbon is what they're talking about. And that falls within 50 or 100 miles. It doesn't cover the whole planet. It doesn't make it into the atmosphere unless you're burning it in the military jets and rockets and space junk that they're firing up into the sky through the upper limits where this stuff could take 10 to 20 years to fall out, right? Totally different. While wind and solar power are efficient, they're not always available. Like, that's probably one of the stupidest arguments that we hear all the time. They're actually going to give you alternative ways to store the energy. But this is, a straw man's argument where they give you this canned response that, oh, well, there's nothing to store the energy, so wind and solar is no good. Got to get more nuclear. Nothing can replace nuclear, just nuclear, which is basically dying as we speak. We need a way to store the renewable. That sounds like a battery. But you can't power communities with batteries unless you're a degenerate scumbag and a-hole trying to destroy the renewables. You would suggest that. The power grid is a massive machine. To make a battery, we'd have to think big and weird. Again, using the word battery just is torture. So a water battery, if you got two reservoirs, you got no ponds, no rivers, no lakes, no streams, no estuaries constantly. There could be one boy, you fill up your two man-made lakes and you pump water up with excess energy and release it when you need energy. And these things can power a city for like 8 days straight. So it's the perfect solution. The dam in Austria has 830 megawatts, enough to power 100,000 homes for more than a week. And all it is two reservoirs. So wind and solar, you should be using geothermal because it's always on and tidal energy. But geothermal is the best one. If you dig deep enough, you'll get to 1,000 degrees and you're fine. It's perfect. And it'll run for hundreds of thousands of years. So why have all these commodities like gas, oil, and coal and idiotic nuclear when you can have geothermal? Because geothermal could replace all current power plants. Take, for example, pumped hydro. Is the biggest kind of grid storage battery currently in operation in the United States, and the oldest. The first pumped hydro facility in the country opened in 1930. But of course, the United States is claiming there is no such thing as pumped hydro. But the water batteries is better, where you have two reservoirs. Rather than taking it from the ocean or the rivers or lakes, you just have two reservoirs. And you just recirculate them. That's 2 Danas. That's a little bit too much for everybody, I'm pretty sure. Take, for example, pumped hydro. Pumped hydro, hydropower, or pumped hydro is the biggest kinds of grid storage battery currently in operation in the United States. It's also the oldest. The first pumped hydro facility in the country opened in New Milford, Connecticut in 1930. If those renewable power facilities were hooked to pumped hydros, that excess energy could be used to pump water up a hill or a mountain and fill a reservoir. Again, this is really simple technology we're talking about. They've been doing it since 1930, 90 years. You can build your own mountain if you wanted to and have your reservoir on the mountain. It doesn't have to fall very far to generate the energy you need for your generators. There's another one, multi-arm cranes, where they take big blocks and they shift the blocks. They use energy to lift the blocks, and then the blocks are released and they pull on a generator, which apparently has a lot of promise. And you can use recyclable materials. There's one of them right there. Energy Vault develops gravity energy storage solution and energy management software. So they got the kinks out of this system. If you took a couple of hundred universities to refine it, it'll be ready to go next week. So basically their blocks will go into all of these receptacles. Here's an idea where the blocks are moved up. And then when you need them, the blocks are slowly released, 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. And this, you can store a lot of energy this way. $30-ton bricks to an elevated position. Right, there's a whole bunch of different technology to do the same thing. Or, to store energy. We've covered probably at least 100 different ways. I've actually produced videos just on this subject, and it gets taken down with my other site, unfortunately. I got to redo those videos. But see how it releases the 30-ton blocks, and then you can build it to scale for the size of your community. And it runs on a software system, which makes it very efficient, very effective, and there's nothing toxic. And so you can put it just about anywhere. So you put it right with your solar and wind and other, like the ideal energy is geothermal. Geothermal ticks all the boxes. Two systems can be co-located, renewable, or built as a standalone storage to support grid stability for like peak power, where you got all this energy from when 6 or 8 hours a day. So let me go back for a second. So you can see all the blocks, and with the spare energy, you lift the block back up. And you have grid stability, so you can build these in factories and ship them to your cities, right? I think it's a good idea. There's a shitload of good ideas. We've kind of covered this concept a couple of times over the years. I really like that. That one's really, it's ready to go from what I'm seeing. I'm not an expert in it. Other companies are exploring using abandoned mine shafts as potential gravity storage sites that can help. Gravity storage. Again, thermal energy storage. You can store renewable energy for 18 months in salts where you can store it at 500 or 600 degrees. And then you can liberate it and convert it into electricity. So thermal storage can be used with existing fossil fuel plants by swapping out, say, a coal burner for a thermal storage unit. It solves multiple problems. The infrastructure remains in place. The best idea is to drill straight down under coal, gas, oil, nuclear plants, tap into geothermal, and then get rid of the fossil and disgusting nuclear and replace it with geothermal, leave the rest of the infrastructure in place. Gravity storage and pumped hydro. Compressed air is even more efficient, where you just dig mine shafts and compress air down there at 120 psi. Creates a lot of heat. So take the heat and store it in the salt. And then when you want to unpack the air, you can use the same heat now to expand it instead of burning fossil fuels to generate heat to make it expand fast, right? You don't have to really use any, but it helps it go a lot further that way. And rust. You can build, iron is the most prolific thing available, and you can have iron rusting, and that generates electricity. We've covered that before, I'm sure. Georgia Utility is going to build an iron-air battery that can store 100 hours worth of energy as a proof of concept. Yeah, it's a brilliant idea, the Earth batteries, for sure. Search for nuclear waste repository will take longer than 2031. Actually, long term, they figure could be 2068 in Germany. 2069, we'll see. Search for a repository for 1 million years. They say 2031, no repository for highly radioactive nuclear waste will be found in Germany. But they were, in another story that will show up here eventually, is by 2068, long term it could be, before they have a repository to put the fuel rods that are still splitting atoms into the environment. 2068. It's 46 years. Which is about on par with Canada, right? What Canada, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, which is the nuclear industry that created it, are in no hurry to put the atoms in the ground to stop harming all the species and humans. Taxpayers in the dark after the federal BC spending at UN climate talks in Egypt. Canada sent 335 members. Well, on low-balling it, at $5,500 each, is $1.8 million. Just British Columbia sent 300 plus delegates to the UN, which is the military-industrial complex. That's who UN is. It's 195 militaries. They're not supposed to exist. They're definitely not supposed to exist in the capacity where they've taken over most facets of our lives worldwide. Like, if you looked at all the subsidy companies of United Nations, it would freak you out. They have officially deviled into almost every facet of everybody's lives worldwide, and it's because these people are always changing up. It's impossible to get rid of them. They're the biggest threat to humanity, particularly the nuclear industry facet, like UNSCLEAR and IRPA and the IPCC and the IAEA, and there's at least a half a dozen other nuclear subsidies of the United Nations. They're the mafia, but 100,000 times more evil. Cabinet ministers and senators and members of parliament, provincial and territorial politicians, business executives, union leaders, representatives from civil society, indigenous and youth organizations, all sent down to this military-industrial complex to get indoctrinated and brainwashed and hypnotized and turned against humanity. That's what United Nations is. It sucks up people that are motivated to do something good and turns them into monsters in increments over time. According to the Free USA flight emissions calculated, round-trip distance from Ottawa to the conference site is 18,000 kilometers, which I was way off. So it's a huge footprint for all of these people. That's a large plane load of people being flown down there. Now, they claim that aviation emissions account for roughly 3.5% of the total human-caused warming of the planet. First off, these emissions don't warm the planet. It's just pollution. This suffocates the planet, the insects, the birds, the animals. But it's nasty emissions because these engines are not efficient. They're at very high altitudes where it could take many decades for it to rain out. So it blocks the sun. Without the sun, you can't grow plants, you can't grow food. Insects can't thrive. Humans can't even thrive. The always creepy UN. Now we're going to cover that, not tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is Reactor 3 and Reactor 4 night. And so Tuesday night, the 15th, we're going to cover COPS 27 headlines. I got a big folder ready to go. So 33,000 people, what would their footprint be? 33,000 times $5,500 or $5,000 each. $165 million just to go there and rent hotels and eat $11 sandwiches. With free Coke, apparently, because Coke is sponsoring. Coca-Cola is sponsoring COPS 27. No irony in that one at all. Coca-Cola. Why doesn't Coca-Cola sponsor me? I'm going to try tomorrow. I'll get Coca-Cola to sponsor me. All day tomorrow. I'm going to record everything. Hello, can I speak to Coca-Cola, please? Operator, can you get me the head office of Coca-Cola? Oh, I can't wait. Who gives a shit? Apparently, though, Freedom of Information from 2021 in Glasgow showed accommodations paid 4 months in advance was $9,000 each. $500 a night, not counting food. What do we got here? Oh, yeah, my last video. How long is it now? 133.25. 133.25. Where are you to, Dana? Oh, I'm right here somewhere. 133.25. That video right there is 133.30. So it's 5 seconds longer. 5 seconds longer. I guess somebody from Ontario. How's Ontario?
Hello there. Yeah, my name is Mike Shell. I'm doing well.
Hi, Mike. How are you? Hang on. Hang on, buddy. Okay, go ahead. You're good.
I want to thank you for calling out some of the fools in chat, and I'd like to support you and your moderator for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, I had no choice. It wasn't staying on topic.
Yeah, you know.
It happens all the time.
Well, when
right?
they got it coming, they got it coming.
Yep. No, it's just disrupting everybody, and you assume it's on purpose because nobody else was doing it, right? And anything else you want to throw out there?
Big shout out to James. We all love James.
Lucid, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
And hope you're doing well and feeling better, and I guess that's it.
That's a nice, tidy, quick phone call. I appreciate it. You sure there's nothing else you want to throw out there?
Not right now.
Okay, Michael, thank you for the call, my friend. You have a great night.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You too.
Yeah, bye-bye.
And welcome to chat.
Thank you, and the chat. Yeah, okay, I'll put that out there. So he says hi to the chat. Excellent. Excellent. Where are we to here? New Google search tool spotlights IEA, International Energy Agency information. So they got what the hell is his name? Maybe it'll show up here. Fate Bristol, now, which is a pro-nuclear, installed at International Energy Agency, and he's promoting nuclear. Whereas just a couple of years ago, they were saying there's no need for nuclear. In an effort to ensure greater availability of reliable information about the crisis, the IAEA is providing advice, data, and statistics for people trying to make informed decisions in their everyday life. Like, in all honesty, Google is probably not somebody you want to be trusting. It's mostly lobbyists that work there, and they have control. And that's why you see the incredible censorship on me, obviously. Anyway, they got a new... the IAEA is committed to clearing the fog of information surrounding the current energy crisis. Really, that's not... They're just a organization. Why are they being put on a pedestal? And Fate Burrows, or Bristol, or whatever you pronounce it. It is vital for policymakers, business leaders, consumers to have access to data, analysts, and advice that is accurate and impartial. I'm accurate and impartial. A little bit. More than these crazies are. Oil price. Every time we get a story from oil price, like, palm to the face time. EU needs 460 billion investment to maintain nuclear power. Can you imagine the amount of renewables and storage they could build with 460 billion? Like, woohoo! Power the whole country for a lousy 460 billion. Now let's burn it on the nuclear industry. Because if not, they're going to yell at us. Just to keep the current level of disease factories generation capacity, the unelected EU Commissioner for Energy said at a nuclear energy forum this week, Well, you're not going to go there. Well, I would, but these people are not going to go there and say, hey, dirty scoundrels. Nuclear power have an important role to play in the EU's climate target of low carbon. Every time I heard the word low carbon, I almost have a seizure, right? His last words, he was yelling about low carbon or something, and then he just died. The backbone of the future European carbon-free power system. There's no such thing as carbon-free power, you lunatics. Nuclear ain't one of them. Will be predominantly renewables, but the reality is renewables need to be complemented by baseload electricity. That's why the crazies in the nuclear energy is not just a safety, security, but a solution, it added. This is nonsense talk, eh? The EU needs a stable generation capacity at the level of just over 100 gigawatts. Well, last year, there was 291 gigawatts of renewables came online in just 12 months. I can probably find it if you give me just a second. Stop being so pushy. I'm doing the best I can, damn it. I'm just a man. Here we go. Oh, so. See. Let's see how this works out. I'm not sure if this is 2020 or 2021. 2020, I think it is. Yeah, 20. There's a date up there. 2021. So in 2020, the global net increase in renewables was 261 gigawatts and 0.4 nuclear. Tiny discrepancy. There are actually only 440 nuclear power plants, which is 390 gigawatts. And so when you put up 291 last year, 261 the year before, you produced more renewables than all the generation capacity of nuclear combined worldwide in just 24 months. If you use storage, then immediately now you make nuclear gas, oil, and coal pointless. I could say redundant, I know, but I'm going to say pointless. Because I kind of like that word when it comes to nuclear. It's okay if you're trying to murder all the insects and birds and bacteria and fungus and everything, but if you're actually trying to do something good, nuclear is the wrong one. Those who argue we absolutely must construct more disease factories, also known as nuclear power plants, to beat the climate emergency are clearly batshit crazy. The world put in 2/3 as much renewable energy in a single year as produced by all the existing nuclear power plants in 2020. And in 2022, it was equal to 333 nuclear power plants last year came online in renewables. But storage has been, what's the right word, I wonder? Not stymied or sabotaged, hijacked, misappropriated. Like Canada got $4.3 billion for renewables for storage. The nuclear industry took all $4.3 billion. No, you're not getting none of that. You'll put us out of business. And so they destroyed Canada's future. So 100 gigawatts is what the EU says it needs. 400 and what? Where's it to? 460 billion. Can you imagine 460 billion worth of renewables? Goodbye nuclear. Hello future. If you say hello nuclear, you can say goodbye future. See the problem? Our analyst shows that without immediate investments, around 90% of existing reactors will be shut down around the time when we needed them the most, in 2030. The majority of the reactors are old and decrepit and have surrounded by farms and murdered billions of us in increments over the last 80 years. New technology like small modular reactors. Who's laughing at me? You take that back. That sounds better. Alrighty, decarbonize. You can't decarbonize with nuclear. And by the way, without carbon, there is no insects or animals. The planet would be a wasteland, right? EU aims to have the first European small modular reactors go live in 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 area. Kind of like their fabled fusion reactors. They've been trying for 50 years. And they give you this vague 20, 30 something, 15, 20 years. So that's going to fix the problem now. They're going to warm everybody this winter, next winter, the year after. Come on, man. The industry is desperate, and it can only exist by constant lies, right? We cover, that's what we do each day, 5 days a week, because otherwise I wouldn't have any hair left in my head. You pull it out, right? But 5 days a week, we try to cover as many headlines as possible. And it's all propaganda, every inch of it, every paragraph. Sometimes it's brutal. Sometimes it's every sentence. And so you see all these patterns when you're doing it as much as I am. Try not to cough here. I'm doing fine. I think I'm doing fine. I think I am. At home, the U.S. has taken action decreases in dependency on fossil fuel. Well, every nuclear power plant needs 2 gas, oil, or coal plants to run it. To build it, to run it for its lifespan, and 60 or 100 years for the decommissioning. That's a fable and a half. I really got to do a whole video just on nuclear decommissioning. You'll never call it decommissioning again, I can guarantee you that. But it is enough to combat the worst effects of climate change. Now, this is an agenda since 2014, right? This claiming nuclear is the solution to climate change. And nuclear is just nosedived worldwide since 2014, since they started this nonsense claiming that nuclear has some redeeming qualities. I might have to take some more of this disgusting Buckleys. Hang on. Can you smell it? Smell that. That's wicked, isn't it? Oh, ooh, that's horrible. My God. It's like drinking Vicks rub or something. What's wrong with you people? Feature on the show about America climate agenda. Oh, this story. That's right. So there's a new show on TV. America's Climate Agenda. That's the name of the show. Their co-host, Leela and Catherine of the U.S. Department of Energy, talking about the role of nuclear. Can try making that up on your own, folks. But it shows you that they're so desperate they got to get on TV to try to brainwash you with idiot shows. There's no question it'll require renewables and carbon capture and sequestering, but it will require nuclear and a lot of them. That's nonsense. The reason they're saying that is because they're saying there's no solution for storage for renewables. So you got to have nuclear, Dana, because nothing else will do the job, only nuclear. Particularly not geothermal. Nuclear energy has actually saved way more lives you would think because it's a carbon-free energy source. So carbon is killing people? Again, we've covered this over the years many times. Nuclear, like I started to show off, we got a poll tonight, will really articulate the issue. Should all nuclear power plants, also known as disease factories, really be surrounded by farms? And 87, I started to show off by showing you why we're talking about that, because they're murdering you with the farms. They're actually murdering us through the farms that are surrounded by nuclear power plants, which is up to 100 miles away on top of that. As far as you can see, farms. They're always hemorrhaging radiation into your environment. And their job is to get up and make it seem like nuclear is like the Hulk and Spider-Man, the superhero. I'm going to quote the World Health Organization, really, which is United Nations. They're going to quote IPCC, which is United Nations. They're going to quote the IAEA, which is, you guessed it, United Nations. Identified that 1 in 5 deaths are premature due directly to fossil fuel burning. Again, this is nonsense. James Hansen, right? Let me dig up that for you, that James Hansen study, because this one came out a couple of years ago where all of a sudden, I'll show you the discrepancy, because me just saying it is not good enough, right? I got to provide the documentation or I'm a liar. You're a liar, Dana. Liar. Pants on fire, Dana. But they can do a radio show, tell all of the lies you want, provide no documentation, and all the media will come out and regurgitate every word they say. Oh, wow. James Hansen, Death from Cold. Let me give you the kookiness that is James Hansen. La 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 la. Oh, hang on. We forgot the picture, the most important part. Voila! James Hansen, Wikipedia. If you go to proposed solutions, the paper examined mortality rates per unit electrical power produced from fossil fuel, coal and natural gas, as well as genocide, ecocide, omnicide, nuclear power. It's estimated 1.8 million air pollution deaths were prevented between 1971 and 2009 through the use of nuclear power, which works out to 64,000 a year, if that happened to be true. So 64,000 a year. Now it's 1 in every 5 are dying from coal, gas, and oil. And from the biggest liars of all time on top of that, right? By being a huge contributor to reducing carbon emissions, which you can't have humans or insects or birds or trees or plants or flowers or animals or insects or birds or mammals or animals or whales or anything if you got no carbon. The more carbon, the more life you got. The more nuclear, the less life you got. Nuclear power is among the safest energy sources available, including wind and solar, which causes more death than nuclear. So the industry is completely out of control. It fabricates lie after lie after lie, and then all the media and universities run out and produce papers and everything to support the lies. And what are you doing? You do realize you're a human, right? No, we got a suit. We're not human anymore, Dana. If we wear a suit, we're not human. Huff said, yeah, absolutely. Other than geothermal, nuclear power is responsible for many fewer deaths, except for the people that eat the food from the farms or breathe the air. Again, right? The industry's entire history is predicated upon deceit and deception and dishonesty and misrepresentation and bald-faced lies. Don't forget bald-faced lies. In the bottom right-hand corner is day 19 of radioactive fallout. Gas, oil, and coal don't produce plumes covering the planet, pulsing energy every second. I showed you earlier studies in North America of 20 million particles of iodine-131 per liter of rainfall sustained and 220 million atoms of 129 iodines, which saturate the thyroid glands of all the species, particularly the vulnerable species, which are the species. And so their thyroid glands are saturated with 131 and 129. And what that means is it's converting that into radioactive hormones, which are stored in the pituitary gland also. This is catastrophic. Just a single event, but imagine happening constantly all day, every day. And this stuff is pulsing energy inside your body at the speed of light, so your body attacks it for the rest of your life, and the insects and birds and animals with white blood cells. The more you got, the more white blood cells you produce. The more you got, then eventually end up with what they call leukemia. You have more red blood cells, white blood cells than red blood cells. So it's like when you cut your finger, your body attacks with white blood cells. And they're usually made from the joints that are close by, not just the spleen, right? But when you get radiation in your body, it's permanent. Your body attacks it for the rest of your life and tries to build a tumor, a sarcophagus around it. We call them tumors, right? And I'm not going to finish that one off because it's upsetting to see so many lies. Available all day, every day for 18 months. And then you take it out, put it in a pool where it's still splitting the atoms for millions of years into the environment. It's idiotic. It's the opposite of a future. If you want a future, nuclear is not part of the equation. If you want children or you want your children to grow up and have a future, nuclear can't be part of the equation. Nuclear is the opposite. Nuclear bad. U.S. Department of Energy announces funding for HALEU demonstration. So they put on embargoes in February, all NATO countries, United Nations countries, and then they caused massive inflation in their own countries because Russia doesn't care. They'll just sell it to somebody else. But they didn't put an embargo, sanctions against nuclear. And the world nuclear news is the equivalent of talking to a demon. They're actual demons. You can't work. They'll never put their name on the stories. They're a lobbying group. And they don't care. They'll promote any nuclear. Doesn't care what it is. As long as it's evil. There is no good thing about nuclear. There is no redeeming qualities to nuclear. It's an insidious, hideous, monstrous genocide, omnicide machine. USD 150 million cost share awarded. So then throw all this money to make this, what they call high assay, low enriched uranium. Low enriched. It's actually 19%, for God's sakes. This is absurdly highly enriched. They're calling it low enriched. Because it was originally 90% and they down blended it. So now it's low enriched, see? They're crazy. They're absolutely crazy. Operates 16 advanced centrifuges in a demonstration cascade at the Department of Energy's facility in Piketon, Ohio, which is built atop one of the biggest aquifers down there. It's completely polluted since the 50s. Before enriching uranium hexafluoride gas to produce 20 kilograms of 19.75% enriched. That's weapons grade almost. No. It's low enriched uranium. No, it's 19.75%. It's a very, very dangerous precedent is what we're talking about. Columbia Development, which is United Kingdom, companies chooses Rolls-Royce small modular reactors that don't exist. So rather than, get an energy source that exists, they're choosing something that doesn't exist. Well, does it exist? No, well, don't say that. We're going to take it. We'll take it. What's in it for us? Rolls-Royce small modular reactors don't exist for deployment in West Colombia. Early this week, it was announced that 4 sites in the United Kingdom, including land near the Sellafield ongoing nuclear meltdown from a mixed oxide fuel facility in Colombia, have been prioritized to deploy the first in a fleet of Rolls-Royce small modular reactors that don't exist. And, and it's surrounded by farms. Jesus, what's the odds? I would have never thought that. A fuel reprocessing facility surrounded by farms. My God, what are they going to come up with next? I think we should all just stop and look up at the ceiling and just ponder this amazing revelation. Does the farms make the nuclear power more efficient? Is that why they're doing it, Dana? I don't know. I don't know this stuff. My opinion is this, look. Should all nuclear power plants, also known as disease factories, really be surrounded by farms? Is that a silly question? Am I a crazy guy? You're a crazy guy, Dana. You're so crazy. Nuclear is a core part of our identity and heritage in Colombia, which is where Sellafield. Now, they got cancer clusters all over Colombia because they're right alongside a Sellafield nuclear meltdown and reprocessing disease factories. And they actually produced studies where they blamed the cancer clusters in children on the common cold. Where they got all kinds of people sign their name. Yeah, no, the cancer cluster is not caused by the nuclear reprocessing facility, for God's sakes. It's caused by the common flow, Dana. There's a study. Just because they produced that study, all nuclear should be closed down. Because they didn't come out and denounce it. Nuclear is a core part of our identity and heritage, says the stupidest person in history in that part of the country. It's not only about the jobs, of course it's about the jobs and the supply chains needed to build and run these disease factories. It's about the new investments in industry sectors we could attract to our region with an energy surplus to offer. These are some sadistic people, isn't it? Obviously the nuclear industry wrote the story, but can you imagine? They're there all day long writing these stories. This is what they do for a living. Write nonsense and lies and deceit and dishonest. Rolls-Royce, small modular reactor CEO Tom Sampson, by utilizing land owned by the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority in West Columbia, the non-decommissioning authority is actually what their name should be, right? They've never decommissioned anything. Is it like 16 of their Magnox plants are down there? They don't know how to decommission it. They got 19 subs, nuclear subs that they just tied up and walked away from, don't know how to decommission it. They figured it's going to take them 300 years and 315 years to decommission Donneray, for goodness sakes, which is an open pit where they dump nuclear waste down that's just hemorrhaging radiation over 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We had a story about it actually on Thursday's show. Recent report highlights nuclear as ESG powerhouse. Recent report. Look at them. They'd run your kid over on the way to school, jump out just to steal a lollipop and their lunch money. No, I'm serious, they would. Last, regarding government standard, the nuclear industry provided some of the highest paid wage earners. So we should let them murder us? Should we let them murder us now because they got high wages? Maybe. I mean, they got to have a job too. It's better to sacrifice the whole planet than them not have a job, right? These factors may contribute to the highly positive attitudes towards nuclear power from those who live closest to the nuclear generation facility. Think about that statement. Think about how disconnected you are to say something like that. I can take you and show you the studies. Believe you, I can show you the massive studies. I've done it many times of cancer clusters. But there's 1,800 illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses from nuclear. It's not just cancer. Heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. They're just a fraction of the diseases from idiotic, crazy, lunatic nuclear. Constellation to renew licenses of all nuclear power plants thanks to a federal tax credit. Rad Waste Monitor. Refueling completed on another disease factory. Providing carbon-free electricity. 100% carbon-free electricity. Reliable carbon-free electricity. I know I forgot something there. Help ensure the Prairie Island continues to provide safe, clean, dirty, reliable nuclear power. Grid reliability, economic stimulus, environmental benefits. Environmental benefits from nuclear. Yeah. It doesn't hurt to be crazy. Like, if you cover this topic regularly, you might sometimes almost lose your mind from the constant barrage of lies and deceit. Reduce carbon emissions. What else? Any more carbon? Oh yeah, the always on carbon-free electricity. They're like, come on, man. Stop it. Just stop it. Our nuclear energy plants today generate half our carbon-free energy. You don't suppose they're trying to brainwash people. Reliable, clean power. 6,000 work activities were performed while they changed the fuel. 6,000 work activities. These are disasters, these places. 650 contractors from across the country. Right? Because they're not going to get their health care when they get sick in a few months from being bombarded with gamma shines, x-rays, and neutron bursts. Totaling more than 70,000 staff hours of work to change the fuel. 70,000 hours. What was it? 6,100 activities. When they go to change the fuel, buddy, they're changing more than the fuel and a few light bulbs, I'll tell you what. Deliver reliable, carbon-free. Now, don't get mad at me. They said it, not me. Carbon-free electricity to our customers. And there are stories where I'll get carbon-free in every paragraph, or net zero, or clean energy. And I literally got to go take a walk around the house or something before I lose my mind. It's whoever wrote the articles, like really, it should be illegal for them to have fingers. Prairie Island is the largest carbon-free energy source in Minnesota. I was thinking about Japan, right? Minnesota, Dana, get your act together. The largest carbon-free energy source. It's the biggest disease factory in Minnesota, is what they're trying to say. The dangers of a nuclear nightmare. The dangers of a nuclear nightmare. Oh man, if you don't stay on subject, you're not going to win anybody over. I don't like it when people come into my comments section and won't stick on the topics. You know, there's exceptions, but when new people show up and they go off in their own direction, that's a red flag for me. The horrific death of almost 1 million people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki made the world realize nuclear is one that no one can win. It's absurd that Ukraine would destroy its own nuclear power plants and contaminate Europe unless you want to blame it on Russia. Don't underestimate a desperate country. If the cooling fails, and of course the nuclear industry would love it. This is great. We got another nuclear meltdown. If the cooling fails in a nuclear power plant, it explodes. Nothing can stop it. The International Atomic Energy Agency, which is not supposed to exist. They're not an International Atomic Energy Agency. They're a lobbying group for the nuclear industry. They got nothing to do with regulatory agencies. They don't even call themselves. They're a lobbying, pro-nuclear lobbying group from United Nations, from the military-industrial complex. Nuclear power plants are dangerous. It takes 100,000 years for the dangerous. Again, they only acknowledge cancer when there's 1,800 illnesses and diseases. Who knows anymore? Oh my God. What's the odds, eh? Take care there, buddy. Crews demolished Oak Ridge National Laboratory reactor, once used for aircraft nuclear propulsion research. Once used for this building they're talking about. Was used for radiation research. Demolition began in September on the bulk shielding reactor at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory and was completed in November. It was the first teardown of a former reactor at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Which is also built in one of the biggest aquifers that feeds major cities and massive thousands of farms in that area, folks. Has been contaminated since the 50s. Just nothing but contempt for themselves and their friends and their loved ones, their communities, and the entire planet. That's these national laboratories. The bulk shielding reactor, also known as Building 3010, was built in the 50s for radiation shielding studies as part of a federal aircraft nuclear propulsion program. They've had over 10 reactors there, most of them with no containment, which means you're releasing the radiation while you're producing it. And then when you take the fuel out and put it in the pool, it's double jeopardy. It's really something. If you never read the story, and they're spraying water on a radioactive building they're tearing down so they can wash it into the water tables. To call the industry crazy that would be polite. That would be how would you put it without being too rude? Workers drained 130,000 gallons of water from the pool and sent it to an on-site treatment facility. Like, first off, 130,000 gallons from the pools is going to be saturated with every nasty radioactive element you can dream up. These fuels are still splitting the atoms. We covered a story a couple of years ago where they had taken water and moved some of the water somewhere else, and it spilled. They had to dig up, it was something like 500 feet. Had to dig it all up and put it on a nuclear waste site and then rebuild that whole area where they wasted water from the fuel pool. I got to find that story and put it in my collection. Then the pool area was decontaminated. Oh yeah, really? The pool area. You took the water out, then you decontaminated the area and filled it with cement mixture. That's what you call decontamination, is it? Who decontaminated it? How many homeless and destitute victims did you sacrifice for that job? And fill it with a cement mixture to close it. No, to leave it there. Every time it rains, that's going to get washing radiation into the environment. In addition to stabilizing the reactor, now they're going to call it stabilizing the reactor pool, they removed asbestos and other waste from the facility. See, look. I'm not making this up, but it seems to me that what's the most evilest way to do something? They'll have like think tanks saying, what's the most evilest way we can do this in the nuclear industry? And they'll say, well, growing food, surround the plants, build the plants and farmland. They're like, yeah, love it, man. So all the radiation, not all of it, but a lot of it are going to land right in them farms. Yeah. Plants are going to suck it up. We're like, yeah. And what are we going to do then? Well, you're going to ship it to the supermarket and poison it in the supermarkets and at their homes. They're like, I love it. And so that's what they've done. That's how that actually played out, right? I've covered so many stories like this, and it's consistent evil. It's consistently, what the hell, huh? What do we got here? Should all nuclear power plants, also known as disease factories, really be surrounded by farms? You got 55 votes and 87%. Well, we had spammers show up. Nobody really opposes our polls unless we're talking about farms around nuclear power plants or Japan growing food in the nuclear wasteland, stuff like that. Then you'll get a small trickle of stupid show up and spam us, right? But generally, we don't. Man, we're actually got a dent in this tonight. It's a lot, right? Baker, which we covered earlier, Pilgrim Nuclear Disease Factory, also known as a nuclear power plant, vetoed the creation of a commission to study the wastewater discharge. Because if they study it, of course, all nuclear power plants are in trouble immediately. So he vetoed the bill after pretending he was on their side for the last year. When he finally get the bill on his desk, he vetoed it. Governor Charlie Baker vetoed a bill that would have created a special commission to study the environmental impacts from dumping nuclear water. They call it wastewater. Look at that, wastewater. Since Fukushima, that word has showed up. We didn't see it before Fukushima. Now, whenever they talk about water at nuclear plant, they call it wastewater. This is nuclear water. That's what the controversy is about. Scumbags. Wastewater. I was disappointed to see Government Baker choose the path of least oversight when it comes to the safety of our base, especially in the face of a universal appreciation of the transparency in nuclear decommissioning, said one of the people that were calling for a commission. She said, I'm eager to press the administration for an explanation to understand where opposition for the amendment arose. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that myself. I'm glad we have people like that out there. The proposal met with immediate and widespread outcry from members of the public as well as federal, state, and local officials who questioned the effect it would have on local fishing, tourism, real estate industries, regardless of whether the harm was real or perceived. Well, no, if it was harmless, they would have done the studies. See? It's not perceived. It's real. Otherwise, you would have just done the study. If you do the study, they got to do a study. Now everybody will want a study done because they realize it's evil what they've been doing. The company has said transporting or evaporating the water would require a substantial amount of fossil fuel. Or evaporating the water, the radioactive dirty bombs into the environment. By the leader is a dirty bomb. And the industry is just, evil is the norm, right? They see nothing wrong with that. They have no issues. They're not going to go bald because of conscience. They don't have one. The most likely solution would be a combination of all four options, not one over another, like dumping it and boiling it off. It's just evil. It's the norm. It's been hid away from you. That's why we call it a death cult. Russia blamed for dramatic bomb damage to Ukraine's atomic lab. I might want to remind you that I'm not taking anybody's side, but I want to remind you you're in a war. It's a war. You got NATO supplying Ukraine with absurd lethal weapons to the environment and humanity's future. They're using depleted uranium to take out the Russian tanks, for goodness sakes. It's such an evilness that they do. It's on purpose. It's not an accident. It was designed to create inflation worldwide. An energy crisis, fear of nuclear power public discontent. I don't even try it. Nuclear Engineering International. As if that's going to make any sense. They're also a nuclear lobbying group. Steam generator replacement completed U.S. Wastewater nuclear power plant. It took them 43 years to get Unit 2 up and running. It was only running for a couple of years. They had to shut it down and replace the generators, which are £750,000 because it's 45 years old. And they knew they should have never started it up. And that was the only plant that they started up in 25 years in the United States, and it took them 43 years to get it to work. It's not confusing at all, is it? Jeremy Clarkson, if Putin were to fire a nuclear missile at Britain, I stand in a field and embrace the light. Does anybody really believe that? Why doesn't he just shut up, right? Well, why is he so arrogant to say something like that? Why? Well, because that's good for nuclear. You say, I stand up in the field and embrace the light. Emergency Management Agency's partner on nuclear response training. Oh, yeah, Chattanooga. They had a lot of people, like 4,000 people. Where's the number, Tom? Never fear, I'll find it. Going to decontaminate pets and people. Over 700 people, my mistake, participated in the exercise. No, your job is to run away. Everybody who stays there gets lethal doses. When they go home and does their laundry, all their loved ones gets lethal doses that'll kill them in increments over time. You can't do nothing, only run away. That's why I got 100 sirens around these disease factories so you can run away. That wasn't put there by the nuclear industry. That was put there by activists who got legislation put in place to put up sirens, but they won't use them. They can have multiple nuclear meltdowns. There's zero possibility they're going to use the sirens. It's zero. Speed limit against continued nuclear power plant operation. Speed limit. And his poisoned offer to the Greens. I was trying to make sense of this and I gave up. I got no idea what it is. Nobody, I don't think whoever wrote it knows what they're talking about. So, whatever. Blue, red encumbrance win near Hanford. The congressional races in Washington State, encumbrance who help control the purse strings for Hanford, well, they only need another $670 billion or something to clean it up. That's not bad, is it? Maybe a little bit, but it's only $670 billion, Dana. Imagine spending that on storage for renewables. Problem solved, see? But that's just one site. They need at least 3 times that for the Idaho National Laboratory. And all the other disease factories. I got a folder there called Disease Factories. Savannah River, which is 800 square kilometers. Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is 22,000 acres. Idaho National Laboratories, which is 2,300 kilometers disease factory. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Oak Ridge National Laboratory, 35,000 acres, 140 square kilometers. WIP Waste Isolation Pilot Project, and don't forget the meltdown they had there. They spent several $1 billion to clean up after a salt truck fire. And damn salt trucks, man. Chalk River National Laboratory, which is what they done there. One of the world's first nuclear meltdowns is disgusting. It's humiliating because it's in Canada. Sardina's National Laboratory in Albuquerque. It's 35 square kilometer nuclear wasteland. Argonne National Laboratories is 1,700 square kilometers. No. 1,700 acres. Nevada National Security Site is 3,500 square kilometers. That's a disease factory there, man. Thomas Jefferson's National Laboratory. Hanford, which is 585 square miles, 1,500 square kilometers. Brookhaven National Laboratory in New Jersey. What a betrayal that place was. Eniwaktok and the Bikini Atolls, which is 1,000,000 square kilometers nuclear wasteland. Santa Susana was equal to 463-mile islands worth of radioactive fallout. Chernobyl changed the sex ratio of everybody and all the species in Europe. Soviet Union's single bomb was equal to 3,800 Nagasaki's. Castle Bravo was equal to 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. Russia's dumped 18,000 radioactive objects into the Arctic. The list is too long, right? You can't actually get through the list. It's so long. It's all good. It's just nuclear. Nuclear is allowed to be evil. Dana, it can't exist without being evil. Leave it alone. Should all nuclear power plants, also known as disease factories, really be surrounded by farms? We got 56 votes, 88%. The trolls gave up, I see. Yeah, you can't get through all the lies. TVA is working on approval for more tritium production for nuclear weapons. The harmless tritium is necessary to make nuclear weapons multiple times more powerful. But it's harmless if you drink it or eat it or consume it, Dana. That's what I mean. The industry has told so many lies they can't keep up with it themselves. 10B pupils meet award-winning kooky nuclear physicist. See, that's outrageous that a nuclear scientist is being brought into schools. That's hideous that they do something like that. That should absolutely, unequivocally, they shouldn't be allowed to own shoes for doing stuff like that. Court appears skeptical, right? They have to walk around barefoot for the rest of their lives for doing that. I think that's appropriate. Court appears skeptical of environmental arguments against Texas interim storage site. Court appears skeptical. Lawyers representing a coalition of humans seeking to block a proposed commercial interim storage facility for spent nuclear fuel, which is vented into the community. So they want to bring all the nuclear fuel from all the disease factories to this one spot, and so the people there can shut up and die. They can die screaming, which is what will happen, but shut up, right? Crapo, the Idaho National Laboratory's nuclear legacy. Talk about kissing up to that. Wow, Senator. This is despicable, man. He said he's not done. That's his disguise. In 1951, Walter Zinn and his team were able to power 4 light bulbs from a nuclear reactor and gave millions cancer. Nuclear energy is good for jobs. It's good for our ear. This includes finding ways to create accident-tolerant fuel and develop small modular reactors that don't exist anywhere on the planet. So there's no such thing as accident-tolerant fuel. They're trying to make it tolerant for an extra 10 to 15 minutes. Right? But when you read that, it sounds like they're trying to make fuel that can't melt down. But that's not actually what they're doing. They're trying to give it, the operators, an extra 10 or 15 minutes before they got to run away. Over the past few Congresses, I was successful in navigating the passage of the Nuclear Energy Innovation Capabilities Act and the Nuclear Energy Innovation Modernization Act, NEMA. Look at it. That cuts your throat in a hurry a bit. Increasing our energy security by reducing our reliance on China and Russia. How about energy security by using good stuff instead of stuff that's going to hemorrhage emissions into the environment? Is that stupid? It is an honor to be part of and serve this community of extraordinarily demonic and sadistic and twisted individuals who have made the disease factories what it is today. I relish the opportunity to promote the work being done in the nuclear wasteland known as Idaho National Laboratories and tell others in Washington, D.C. of the nuclear power, positive potential. I look forward to continuing to advocate for dirty nuclear energy as the Idaho National Laboratory is solidly rooted as the cornerstone of the eastern Idaho community. Sitting on top of one of the biggest freshwater aquifers in Idaho, on top of that. I will cut your throat. Here's Australia Prime Minister having an orgasm meeting Joe Dementia Biden. I forgot the headline of this story, and you can thank me later. I'm sure I done you a favor. A small airfield in northern Australia is slated to permanently host a fleet of US B-52 bombers. How come they can't build their own bombers? Because they're Australian, Dana. They're the lackeys of US, right? Whatever US tells Australia, not the Australians, they'll tell them to F off real quick, but the government in Australia. To prepare for the possibility of war over Taiwan. China doesn't even recognize Taiwan. The deal will see a deployment of up to 6 nuclear-capable aircraft, despite the fact Australia is supposed to be a non-proliferation country. Should war with China break out? Again, right? You're obviously talking to the military when you read stuff like that. They can't have a job if there's no wars. If they can't go out and rape women and children, then what's the point of joining the military, is what most of them will tell you. The ability to deploy U.S. Air Force bombers to Australia sends a strong message to adversaries about our ability to project lethal air power. A U.S. military spokesperson. The Pentagon got 29,000 military spokespersons. Got to sell a war, man. What's the wages for 29,000 military lapdogs, I wonder? Most analysts agree the immediate adversary is China. Most likely flashpoint is Taiwan. Again, this is ludicrous to even suggest it. America going to war with China. The thought of Australia going to war against anybody is laughable. It's ridiculous. It's silly to even suggest it. It's just, can you imagine what the comedians would do with that story? Australia is threatening China. China said, shut up before I come over there and slap you. Sweden will not permit NATO nuclear weapons on its soil. Like Denmark and Norway, right? Oh, yeah? Well, NATO is not supposed to exist, right? NATO was created as a response to the glorious Soviet Union. And when they were dissolved and got rid of all the pensions of the country, then NATO should have been dissolved. But NATO, no, we're not going nowhere. We're too evil to go anywhere. NATO, if you look up NATO, it says 30 militaries. 30 different countries, militaries. So that's called a gang, a very dangerous gang. Well, Billstrom acknowledges Sweden has submitted an application for NATO without preconditions and agreed that his country must first be approved as a member before telling the military-industrial complex what it could and could not do on its soil. He dismissed the controversy as a tempest in a teacup, which is just blown out of proportion, basically. Casual sequence of India's drive to resume nuclear testing. Casuals. So what's India's done is they have infiltrated governments worldwide, so it's hard to push back against them, see? And not only that, they're now insiders. That's generally what that story is about. Oh, to be an insider. What the hell? Are we still going? We're almost finished. We only got a couple more stories, hopefully. The fate of the king of rains, the ideological of Russia's world. Duggan offers to kill Putin, which was a tradition to kill the leader in certain parts of Russia many moons ago. The rulers were cut open in the stomach and blaming misfortune. If the rulers couldn't bring food and wine and everything to their communities, then they should kill them, right? He looks pretty stable. Hopefully he's not working for the nuclear industry. He's the well-known Russian philosopher and propagandist. Yeah, that seems about right. Southampton man among veterans who suffered suspected radiation exposure from the 1950s nuclear test. So basically, 70 years later, the majority of the victims have died. And after 70 years, administration after administration after administration after administration, telling them it's all in their head, you're not getting nothing, shut up, walk away and die, scumbag. Some of them are starting to get recognition. Boris Johnson met with the son of an ex-KGB oligarch the day after he was sanctioned. The poll tonight was, should Boris Johnson be charged with sedition for importing Fukushima food into United Kingdom a couple of days before he was finally removed? There he is hanging out with the Russian oligarch's son, who's a lord. Can't make it up, can you? Greece runs completely on renewable energy for the first time. 100%. Imagine if they had storage. They built their windmills on the mountains where the wind blows all the time. Nuclear industry was furious. Sweden may struggle to reach climate goals by 2030. Sweden. The Jana Elementary School. The story headline is missing. Yeah. You remember that story from the last couple of weeks? The Jana Elementary School? Well, the military went in there and said there's no radiation, so shut up. That's nice of them, isn't it? That's what the military does. It rapes and kills and murders and slaughters and destroys. Why would you bring them into the picture? So they can destroy. Search for nuclear waste repository could take up to 2046 in Germany. Not so quick. It's actually 2068 in the long run. Screenshot of the first nuclear heart attack surfaced online. Nuclear heart attack. This is a video game. Atomic Heart. And you got robots and anything else that's extremely stupid. That's just another day in the world of nuclear. They love you so much. They want to give all of you heart attacks. La 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 la. Oh, that went wrong. There we go. Now we got it to work. Woo! I didn't check anything the weekend, but on Thursday, Stephen Young donated $50 and James Lucid donated $130. And we absolutely appreciate that. It's been blowing every day for the last 3 weeks. I've been sick for the last 3 weeks. And I've been to the hospital and everything else trying to figure out what the frig is going on. They say my blood's perfect, and that's their words, right? That's because I took all that DCA. And I must have picked up a virus or something. Well, I guess I must have. I was definitely coming around. We're going to rename the show the Nuclear Comedy Show. Nuclear Power Plant or something comedy show. Going to get back to the old roots where we just crack jokes. Because otherwise you're just going to tear the guts out of yourself, right? You know, and you have every right to be upset with the nuclear industry. But we just can't keep doing that to everybody. So we're going to start making fun of them again. Just like the good old days. Should all nuclear power plants, also known as disease factories, really be surrounded by farms? And the obvious answer is no. Nah. So we showed all the evidence for that at the beginning of the show. If you didn't see that, it's worth checking out. We're going to close that poll down in a moment. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody had a great night, great weekend. Let's close the poll here. And that was a great poll. We got 60 votes. We got 55 thumbs up. We won't get no more till tomorrow night's show. But 55 is a good number. Our last show, we only got 30. Hi, everybody. We're going to close down the poll. Closing poll. That was a great poll. What time is it? Oh my God. It's 20 minutes after 12. Midnight. Sorry about that, folks. That's 2 hours, 20 minutes. That's enough. We'll just shut the show down here. Because I can go on for another 10 or 15 minutes doing shout out. Oh, the Geiger counter has gone to sleep. That definitely means, usually that means 2 hours and 15 minutes or something. That's all my battery will last, right? So we really super appreciated the donations. I'll check tomorrow and see if I missed any over the weekend. And I don't know what to do with the boat because we had so much wind. We can't get the boat in the water to get a mechanic to have a look at it. The weather we should get a break in the weather at some point here. I got some other ideas I want to try out. And I'm just starting to come around after being sick for 3 weeks for good. Since the 21st, right? And I was sick for a couple of weeks before that. But since the 21st, I've been sick, and I still do I missed 5 days or something of shows. I couldn't even read the news cycle, let alone put together a show, which is, I think, the first time in over a decade that I wasn't able to do anything. I could barely get out of bed. It was horrible. And I went on a diet, a heavy diet, not a heavy diet, I guess, a light diet. And that's worked extraordinarily well over the last 6-7 weeks, yeah? And so feeling way better in that context. And my ankles don't hurt anymore. And they're not seized up on me. After 3 years, they were so painful that I couldn't turn, like sharp with my foot planted. I was afraid my ankle would crack off. And that's completely, my ankles are completely normal. Not from the weight loss, but that happened within a week of changing my diet. Getting rid of starch, sugar, wheat, and donuts and all the other stuff that just drives me nuts. I miss the junk food. I wasn't a big eater of junk food. I'm sorry. I meant to stop the show because we're already 2 hours and 23 minutes into it. I'll come in and read the comments after. And if you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. We got 58 likes. Once the show is over, likes won't show up no more. Hugs for everybody. Thank you, everybody. I apologize for such a long show. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is Reactor 3 and 4, and it's going to be a hell. You're going to be rolling with laughter the whole show. Trust me. Reactor 3 and 4 fuel pools. Wait till you get a load of what I got ready for you tomorrow night. You're going to love it. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night, folks. Take care. Okay, good night, everybody. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody on tomorrow night show. We got a really good show. We'll get after building 3 and 4 and the fuel pools that they faked. It's going to be a great time. Get your kids and families together, and pork chops and popcorn, and ask Coca-Cola. I'm going to ask Coca-Cola to sponsor me tomorrow. And I'll let you know how it goes. Take care, folks.